Hey, Tony, I know you were part of the analytics group, so you might have a few things to add there, but also I think our group would be interested in the one you were in on building inclusive cultures. You frozen
Yes, thank
there?
you for that.
Okay.
So, we had a great, you can hear me? Okay, good. We had a great conversation on building inclusive cultures. I think if I tried to sum up some of the points that the groups were discussing, it is very similar to what John and Brad outlined. And so you see some overlap here. But one of those things was about measuring impact. How do we get clear about what our challenges are and what are going to be the right data points that we need to measure to demonstrate impact? What we discovered is that a lot of organizations, or some organizations, having to take an approach where they're looking at what are other companies doing and not really looking back inside to say, what's going to make the most sense for us to move the needle around this subject we call diversity, equity, and inclusion. So identifying what we want to measure and being clear about what we want to try to impact. And then that was the thing that led them to what they would consider to be effective practices around building inclusive cultures. The other one that we looked at is how to stay in tune with what was going on inside of the organization. And we've heard people talk about this in terms of leveraging employee resource groups or building champions or finding other ways for senior leaders or for the organization to keep the pulse on the environment so that people understand what's happening and how our employees might be feeling. This becomes particularly important over the last 12 to 18 months because we see a rise in the initiatives around diversity and inclusion is in large part a response to George Floyd and subsequent Black Lives Matter movement. But what people haven't always unpacked regarding that movement is that now you created almost a fourth category of diversity and inclusion that we need to consider. And this is kind of the social or social impact or racial injustice or social inequality, where communities, customers are actually driving and forcing higher levels of accountability for the organizations. So now I need to share my metrics, even if I didn't have to before, but now we have this large community that is saying it's no longer enough to be verbally supportive of diversity and inclusion efforts. We want to see what you're doing inside of your organization in order to say that you are actually a champion of diversity. It's no longer a lip service type movement. So groups are trying to wrestle with, we got this huge swell of accountability that is external and sometimes conflicting, where some people want you to do it and others do not, and they're trying to find what's the right initiatives that's going to help us move forward. And then the last one, I think, is just really trying to identify what the effective approaches are. And I'm very intentional about using the word effective over best because we hear the term best practice a lot. And what I've discovered is that a lot of organizations get themselves in trouble when they follow best practice. I would actually prefer that you follow effective practices and what is effective for your environment and your organization. So if I was to jump on the point that you had asked John about what are some kind of specific things that an organization can do to illustrate or demonstrate measurement around diversity and inclusion. Here's an organization, won't say the name, that was very clear about they wanted to increase their marketplace customer growth, customer expansion, really leveraging diversity to help grow the business. Now, all of us have a slide somewhere in our diversity deck that talks about, hey, diversity improves innovation and outcome and customer sales. So how do you measure that? And so what this group was doing is they actually created measures that looked at and talked about what are the new ideas that are created from diverse teams. So they intentionally put diverse teams together and they tried to measure ideas. So one volume they looked at is ideas that were created as an outcome of having a diverse team. And then the ultimate measure was, when does an idea go to market? Because remember, innovation doesn't start when you create an idea. Innovation starts when you go to market. And so now they're looking at how all of these diverse thoughts or profiles, conversations lead to initiatives that went to market and what has been the success of that product in the market. You can see this with Organizations that create video games, where there was one where they created a new joystick for individuals with disabilities so that they could interact with that. That was an idea generated through diverse groups that actually went to the marketplace. So you start to think about how your business interacts that way.